That's what transmutation is. That's the whole alchemical purpose. And the communion at the altar is alchemy. That's what you do whenever you redirect these forces within you. Not to suppress it, because if you suppress it, then you can't move it. You can't use it for something else because you've cut it off. You can't condemn that. You see, you neither resist evil nor do you judge it. You see, you love it. You love it into a different form. This is what the whole thing is about, you guys. It's the whole thing. So tonight we're going to talk about the communion, the sacrament of communion. This is at the core of Christianity, right? To understand the way spiritual power manifests in the physical world, we must first grasp the principle of mediation. In order for a higher energy to interact with a lower energy, there has to be a mediating agent, an interface, something that resonates harmonically with both the above and the below. So, we talk a lot about above and below, as in as above, so below. I wonder if you know what that means, what we're talking about when we use those words. What's above, what's below? When we use those words, what we're talking about are states of energy. The above is higher potential energy. The below is more of an inert energy. And this is really important to understand when it comes to the sacraments. We have to get these concepts of what's high and what's low, what's of higher vibration, what's of lower vibration, because there's a tendency to want to put a moral interpretation on that, like high is somehow better, low is somehow, evil, not good. And that's really not a very clear way to think about it. When we talk about a higher energy that's higher in vibration, and higher energies, generally speaking, rule lower energies. If you have a higher temperature, for instance, it's going to lose heat to a lower temperature, right? That's one of the laws of thermodynamics. You don't have cold cooling down hot. You have hot surrendering its energy to the cold, looking for homeostasis, right? So that's what we're talking about in when we talk about as above, so below, higher energies, lower energies. Our soul, for instance, is of a higher nature, vibrationally speaking, than our physical body. At the same time, it's of a lower nature than God. The soul is the medium through which divine energies feed into the physical body. But just as this is true in principle, it must also be true in the physical. There has to be a physical counterpart, a correlation through which real energy can produce real results. So what is the soul? A good analogy is a computer operating system. First of all, the soul is that part of us, that field of intelligence that operates our physical body. All of the automatic systems in it, everything from governing the balances, the chemical balances in our bodies, to the way they move, to the way we see, all of our senses, how those work are all governed by the soul. And in that sense, you can kind of see how we can use the operating system of a computer as an analogy, because that's what's running in the background. And just like with the computer, you don't know what's going on behind the screen. There's not much happening behind the screen, really. It's all in the central processing part of the computer. That's where all the action is going on. So our soul is that part of God's intelligence that is labeled human being, right? human being, that's our soul. If we look for the correlation in our physical body, we find that it's our blood that mediates between us and the world. Blood carries oxygen from the air we breathe and nutrients from the food we eat. It delivers these elements to the cells of our body. It also carries away the waste products of our metabolism, the toxic gases released by our cells as they process these substances. Both oxygen and the broken down molecules of food are more volatile than the dense, stabilized molecules of our flesh and bones. They are the above in terms of vibration to the below of these bodily structures, and the blood mediates between them. So the blood carries oxygen and the nutrients from the blood from the food that we eat. They have a higher potential energy because they are broken down and put into a form that the body can readily pick up and use. Whereas all of the other parts of our, the other cells in our body are much more stable. They have structure, they have form, and these elements that the blood brings to them are more volatile. They're more readily available. Blood is the central theme in Christian symbolism. It winds its way through the entire story of Jesus Christ, from his bloodline connection to the house of David to the spilling of his blood at the crucifixion. But comparing the story of Jesus to the physiological significance of physical blood is not just an analogy. Neither is it an attempt to mythicize the story of Jesus Christ. It is neither an analogy nor a myth. It's a correlation. That which is in heaven is mirrored in that which is in earth. And it is this mirroring that provides the resonant form through which spiritual energies can bridge the gap between heaven and earth.
I'm actually a Steiner student. So the way Steiner talks about blood is that blood is spiritual. And also, on the other hand, he speaks about everything that's fluid in the human body is etheric. Steiner says that the blood is the most spiritual part in a human being.
Yes.
While in the other line, he also says that everything that is fluid in the body is etheric, of an etheric quality. So
yes. Let me read on a little bit more, and I think we'll get to how it ties in spiritually.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for asking the question. The physical substance of blood carries the spiritual vibrations of the heaven worlds, the intelligence and characteristics of our soul. Just as our soul is in the continuous contact with God, so is our blood in continuous contact with our soul, primarily through the air we breathe. So we have lungs, right? When we breathe, air is important, right? But why? Why is air important? Air is important because it is bringing oxygen into our body. But where? Where is it bringing oxygen to? It's bringing it to our blood. So air and all of the spiritual connotations that we have about air, such as pneuma, such as ruach, the life-giving spirit, God breathed the breath of life and man became a living being, as it says in Genesis. All of the circulatory system, every aspect of it, is all for the purpose of bringing that life spirit into our bodies. That's what we breathe in. We're breathing in the life spirit of God. The physical substance of blood carries the spiritual vibrations of the heaven worlds, the intelligence and characteristics of our soul. Just as our soul is in continuous contact with God, so is our blood in continuous contact with our soul, primarily through the air we breathe. And in turn, our physical structure, our body, is in continual contact with our blood, correlation. These systems are nested within each other. They form an unbroken chain from the Godhead to our being in the world. So the air we breathe is the mediator between our blood and our soul. So we have like a hierarchy. We have God, we have our soul, we have our blood, and then we have our body. So those four stages: God, soul, blood, body. We bring earth and heaven together by offering ourselves as the interface. When we live in the world as a soul and self, it is our blood that carries the vibration of those essential qualities. It is our blood that acts like an antenna that continually transmits spiritual frequencies into our flesh, which in turn radiates those qualities into the space around us. So we have this part of us that is in continuous contact with God. It's like they say, the soul is always face to face with the Father. That's where God reaches all the way down into the physical plane through us by virtue of the air we breathe, which carries that vibration, those spiritual forces, into our lungs, into our blood. And then our blood then acts as the mediator between that and our body. So we have this continuous step down mediation process. The air mediates the spiritual energies of God to our soul. Our soul mediates those same energies, those same qualities, stepping them down to our blood. And then our blood steps it down further and acts as the mediator between those energies and the cells in our bodies. This principle of mediation is really important. It's kind of the whole thing. And it shows up everywhere. In nature, there are always two things mediated by a third. Okay, like in cell biology, you have the cell membrane mediates between the substances outside of the cell to the substances on the inside of the cell, right? Our skin mediates between our environment and our internal balance.
Michael, it seems like you're talking about a physical thing, but of course, it's a reality that's like much more than the merely physical processes. But there's just parts of it that are visible and parts of it that are invisible to most people.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So we're talking about correlation. We're talking about as above, so below. We're talking about how the energies of heaven, how the consciousness and the presence of God in the heaven world comes all the way down into the physical. See, this is like, it's kind of like Jacob's ladder. So when we talk about alchemy, or we talk about the sacraments, we're talking about prayer, we're talking about blessing, all of this is bringing heaven to earth. It's what mediates earth and heaven together, what mediates heaven to earth and earth to heaven. So our bodies are like the pattern through which all of this happens. And there's as above, so below can be stated more like the law of analogy. Anything that we talk about that's spiritual has its correlation in the physical. This is the great secret, right? This is why they, in occult literature, they call the body the grand man. The way I think Da Vinci portrays the human body as the sum of all things, because of this law of analogy, this correlation. That and people talk about, well, God made us in his image and likeness. So what does that mean? Does God have a body with, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, trunk, all of that? No. We have to think in terms of principle. And this is where the Greek philosophers said God's first thoughts were in numbers. Another one of them said God geometrizes. So at the very basic level, what we're dealing with is pattern, right? Pattern. And not just pattern of shape. That's a mistake too. We don't, when we think of the word form, we don't want to think in terms of shape. What we want to think in terms of is function. When we talk about patterns in spiritual work, we're talking about patterns of function. Here's a good example. If I reach for this bottle of water, that's the same pattern of function as the roots of a tree when they reach out into the ground looking for moisture. Me reaching for this, the tree's roots reaching out for moisture, that's the same thing. Spiritually speaking, that's identical because it's dealing with a principle or a pattern of function, not the way it looks, you see? And not just because both are looking for water. You see, it's a pattern of function. And this is really important to get if we're going to understand ritual and sacraments, because those are all about patterns of function. And we'll get into that more as we go along here. Reach up through the octaves of your being and feel the spiritual presence within your blood, the light, the consciousness, the Christ. This is where your life is. When you focus your attention there, you are inviting the Christ being into your body. Your blood is your point of connection. Imagine that for a moment. Use your imagination as an organ of perception. Use your imagination as an organ of perception. Just visualize all of the blood in your body. See it moving. See it going to all parts. See it infused with the oxygen that you breathe in from the air. See it glowing. See your blood glowing. Just imagine if you looked at other people and instead of seeing the external part of them, you saw this glowing blood. And you could see this substance, this fluid, flowing in these beautiful patterns and pulsing and lit up from within itself, self-illuminated. That's your blood. That's what's going on inside of you. It's in you all the time. And it's glowing. It's constantly picking up oxygen and nutrients and constantly letting go of the waste products. It's like the blood is breathing, right? It's not just the lungs. The blood is breathing. The blood inhales and it exhales. It inhales and it exhales. See, this is the divine life in matter. This is animated. This is God animating the material world. Okay, so now we're going to talk about bread. What's bread? Bread is the body and what we do with it, right? Bread symbolizes the body. The form. It is the substance we consume. Bread is made in an oven. And that's talking about the alchemical furnace called Athenor. If you read or you know anything about alchemy, they talk about that furnace. And what is that furnace? It's you, right? What's the main product of metabolism? Heat. You are the oven. You are the alchemical oven. It's within you that all transmutation takes place. This means that it is through our actions, the subjugation of our lower impulses to our reason, that the body is prepared as a fitting vessel for the light of Christ. Remember in our meditation class, we talk about sublimation. We talk about those lower impulses and we bring them within the core of our being, that core of light, and then do something with the energies, those lower energies. We use them to do something else, right? We don't let those energies act out. We use them as fuel to do something constructive. This is how transmutation takes place. Sacrificing our personal will purifies it by and through the agency of alchemical fire. As we release it, our karma is burned up. You know how we say in the communion, know that through the fruits of your labors, that you are absolved of all past error. By the fruits of your labors. What are those labors? It's shadow work. This is taking those instinctual energies, those instinctual impulses. We all know what they are. You take those, you don't hide them, you don't suppress them, you don't reject them, you don't try to fix them, you don't do any of that. You bring them as though they were a part of you, like some kind of sub-personality. You invite them in and you sit them next to you on the couch, on the sofa. And you make them sit close and you ask them, what is it you're trying to tell me? When you do that, this is the same as when you take that energy and you're using it, because as you use it for something, it's like instead of going to the refrigerator and, you know, stuffing your mouth, which is, God, you really want to do that, right? You take that same desire, that same impulse, and you go over to the sink and you do the dishes, you know, and you're not going to like it, you know, because fire burns, fire's hot. And what you're doing is you're acting as the alchemical furnace, taking that desire, using it as fuel to do something else. And it's really going to piss you off. It's not fun. You know, believe me, this is the passion of Christ. You see, this is the Christ in you that takes these energies and does the transmutation. The passion of Christ was extraordinarily painful. For us, it's not that big a deal, because doing that is a hell of a lot easier than being nailed to a cross, right? But if you take the nailing to the cross as a pattern of function, we call it spirit affixed to the cross of matter. That's what the crucifixion is. That's what it symbolizes. As a pattern of function, it's the very same thing as you taking your desire to eat chocolate cake, which is just waiting there for you, calling you, wanting to become one with you, right? And you wanting to become one with it, to consume it, right? You take all of that and you use it for something else. All the time knowing, you see, this is the pattern of function of Christ going willingly to his death. His disciples said, call on a legion of angels and have them save you from this. And he said, no, this is why I was sent. This is why I'm here. This is why you're here, to do the exact same pattern of function, to do the pattern. It's turning an animal into a man or woman, and the man into a god. That's what transmutation is. That's the whole alchemical purpose. And the communion at the altar is alchemy. It is the pattern of function of transmutation. What we're taking are lower energies, lower substances of lower energy, and we're raising them to a higher energy. We're calling a higher energy into the lower form to transmute it. That's what you do whenever you redirect these forces within you. And it can be, I mean, when you work with this, it's extraordinary how minute every little action can be. You can be going along doing anything, and a thought goes through your mind of so and so, and God damn them, and what they did, and son of a, all of that stuff. That's your opportunity. That's a lower instinctual energy that you can take, and you can feel energy when it moves through you. You can take it and you can move it into something else, right? Not to fix it, not to suppress it, because if you suppress it, then you can't move it. You can't use it for something else because you've cut it off. You've blocked it. You've stuffed it back down in there. No, you bring it, you let it come up, warts and all. You invite it right up, and you take it and you use it. And you love it. You say, yeah, I'm a hateful person. And that's okay. That's okay. It's all right. You're a human being. You can't condemn that. You see, you neither resist evil nor do you judge it. You see, you love it. You love it into a different form. This is what the whole thing is about, you guys. It's the whole thing.
That exact teaching, if I can say something here.
Sure. Yeah, please.
What you just said, the last, you don't judge it, you don't condemn it, you don't suppress it. You take it, you love it, you transform it. That teaching, in my opinion, humble or not, is the crux of what is missing from the teachings of mainstream Christianity today. And it's such a powerful, it's so unfortunate that it's missing, because it is, like you said, it's the whole thing. It is the work, right?
Yep.
And it's the example Christ gave us over and over, and we've turned it into this good, bad, suppress, Peter Pan fighting his shadow, which never works, right?
Right.
Anyway, so thank you for that. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's, this is why you have, these fire and brimstone preachers falling into scandal. Almost, not, I so separated from that world, I don't know much about it. But remember back in the 80s, I mean, it seemed like every year there was somebody, some televangelist getting caught with his pants down, right? And it was like this. That's what happens. I think the 12-step people say if you suppress this stuff, it's going to come out sideways. It's going to come out whether you want it to or not, and it's going to ruin your life. Of course, none of us here have ever experienced that, right?
Never.
No.
Nope.
Right.
Not us.
No, we're good. There's nothing more dangerous than a good person. Write that on your forehead. A good person, a person who says, I'm a good person, watch out. No, it doesn't mean we have license to, do whatever. It doesn't mean that at all. But a good person is the one who's keeping all that stuff down by force of will. And that person's going to lose every time, without fail. The spinal cord always wins. So make friends with your adversary while you're in the way with him, lest he take you to the judge and the judge throw you in prison. That's in the New Testament, right? So what all of this stuff is talking about.
That's why in the 12-step groups in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's hi, my name's Nathan, and I'm an alcoholic.
I'm an alcoholic, right?
And then, hi, Nathan, welcome. But the
that's it, right? That's it. Hi.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're saying within ourselves, saying hi, welcome.
Exactly. And eventually, like, people who really work the program, they get to a point where they're operating really without guilt. I like there's a certain degree of regret, but not toxic guilt.
Right, right. See, and that's why I keep saying, don't try to fix it. Don't try to make yourself wrong or feel guilty about having these feelings in you. If you want to strangle somebody with their own intestines, just admit it. Yeah, that's what you want to do.
Right.
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 So, hi, I'm so-and-so. I want to strangle you with your own intestines. Welcome. Come on in. because the thing, you see, all these instinctual urges that we have, they don't necessarily want to act out. That's not what they're about. All they want is to be acknowledged. Energy does not like to be changed. You see, it has to be done with subtlety. And subtle in this case is you're not going head to head with the energy. You're not trying to stop a freight train. You're not going to stop it, right? What you're doing is you're inviting it in and saying, tell me what's on your mind. What's going on? Tell me your story. And it'll tell you everything. And as it does, it'll never change. It'll always be that beast, right? But it's going to be just like in the strength key, it's going to be your faithful companion, your ready ally, that fierceness that's right beneath the layer of civility that you carefully cultivate. It will be the edge around it'll outline you with the bright edge. That's what it does. Everybody sees it. They will know that there's something about you that you dare not mess with. You see, and that's a boundary. That's an extraordinary boundary. And the stronger a boundary you have, the more respect you'll get. And respect is important because without it, you lose your humanity. You lose your personhood. If you don't have a healthy boundary, if you're not self-possessed, you'll be possessed by someone else. No one is harder to control than a self-possessed person. And what all of this is describing is how to become a self-possessed person. And there are lots of ways you can be possessed. You can be possessed by an ideology. You can be possessed by an addiction. You can be possessed by a spouse. You can be possessed by a 2-year-old, your own child. All of these other people can control you, but it's the person who controls themselves. I heard this one person say one time in context of relationship, I love you, but don't tell me what to do. That's our way of being in the world. I love you. Don't tell me what to do. You see, don't try to control me. I'm a divine being. I have my own life. Don't you dare try to control me. I will cooperate. I will be a part of whatever cooperative thing is going on. But there's a line, and you don't cross it. You do not cross it. That's if your spiritual work is not doing that for you, God, do something else. Because this is not about head knowledge. This is about what you actually do. This is about becoming aware of yourself as a divine being, as a sun, right? S-U-N. This is you and the way you are in the world, you see. We're here, we can't just eject. We're here for a reason, and it's to do this.
So can I just say something, or like a couple things?
Yes,
First
ma'am.
off, Thank you for bringing up the 12 steps of the 12-step program. That I'm a part of that. And for the longest time, I had the hardest time saying my name is Starlet and I'm an alcoholic. And then all of a sudden it just hit me like, because, you say what you are and then you're like going to become, the I am thing. And then I realized that that was the biggest part that of acceptance and surrender was that part. And the vulnerability and all the stuff that goes with that. That's why I love it so much. Is the humanity, that blending of humanity with spirit so much. And I've never felt a part of something so beautiful in my life. Because there's just every different type of person in a place like that. So that was what I wanted to say first. But second, I have a question about the blood. And this is kind of out there because my mind kind of thinks deeper about some things. But with blood and like, because it is such a precious thing, and how are we to discern about what, like, about medications and blood work and things like this, like transfusions and what those kinds of things. Like, I have friends who are hemophiliacs, people who have like blood disorders, and what is there a meaning behind that stuff? Is there a meaning behind that kind of a thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Blood disorders, and how do you treat your own vessel if you have to get medicines, blood pressure, things like that.
Right, right. Well, you want to take care of yourself so you don't need those things to begin with. But if you do need those things, then there's something going on, right? There's something going on in your soul that needs to be balanced, and it's being played out in the physical plane. So there are lots of reasons for that. Hemophiliac, or if you need a blood transfusion, there's stories or anecdotes about people getting a blood transfusion and experiencing some of the same feelings of the person whose blood they're taking into their bodies. And, I have no reason to doubt that. It sounds, I've never experienced it myself, so I can't say definitively, this is what I experienced, but the stories are pretty convincing. But don't let it freak you out, because even if you take somebody else's blood into your body, your soul, that whole mechanism that we described, that's going to reclaim that blood, right?
Okay.
It's going to slowly but surely get rid of those impressions that are in that blood and replace them with your own.
Okay.
Just
Yeah, I'm
take
thinking
time.
about like blood, donating blood, receiving blood, blood
Oh,
pressure.
yeah, no, do that.
Circulation issues. I mean, there has to be a lot of spiritual reasons for these disorders too, I would think.
Right. Well, I have one of my spiritual gifts is I get to see people, shortly after they go through transition, they die. And I was working with a person, some of whom I won't say her name, but she died last summer. And her daughter called me and asked me, she was living a couple of thousand miles away, and asked me to do last rites over the phone. And so I said, yeah, let's do that. And I used her daughter as kind of like a surrogate. I read the the sacrament, last rites, and her daughter put her hands on her head, and we communicated over the phone. And this woman was very ill and could hardly breathe, and definitely couldn't speak. But she had asked me prior to this, a few months, if I would do that, made me promise, and I did. So I was working with her, and one of the things that we learned in the order, and I think it's a Rosicrucian thing, is that, well, it even precedes Rosicrucianism, but it's where you don't do an autopsy or anything. Like, you'd leave the body alone for 3 days.
Yes.
You don't do anything to the body for 3 days. You put it on ice and you leave it alone. And the reason the Rosicrucians say is, and this is a Jewish custom also, I think that's where they got it. So 3 days. And the purpose of it is so that the experience, which is carried in the blood, can be picked up by the soul. Okay, so there's like a transfer there. And it takes that time, that length of time. And, there are all kinds of other correlations, like Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days, right? That kind of thing. So we finished up, I hung up, and I went for a walk. And it wasn't 60 seconds later that all of a sudden I'm surrounded with all this light. I'm outside, it's daytime, but I just feel all this spiritual light around me. And I can even see it. And I thought, wow, she just died. And later on that day, I called, and sure enough, we hung up the phone, and it wasn't like 30, 40 seconds later, she took her last breath and died. And I told her daughter, don't let them do an autopsy. And she says, no problem. She's over 65, and in this state, they don't do autopsies on people over 65. So I thought, great, I just let it go. So later on, I'm sitting there thinking about it, and then panic goes through me, because they're going to take her to a mortuary, and the mortuary is going to embalm her. And to do that, they let out all the blood and they replace it with chemicals, right? And I was just like beside myself, because I didn't tell her about that. And all of a sudden, this woman just appears to me, just as clear as day, just as clear as day. And she's just beaming from ear to ear, just smiling at me with love and saying, don't worry, that doesn't matter. So I don't know, Rosicrucians must have got it wrong. I don't know, or in her case, it didn't really matter. But the message was clear. Don't worry. So
I love it.
yeah, it was really something. So yeah, there's the blood plays a very distinctive role. And there's one of Steiner's papers is called the Occult Significance of Blood. Nitu, are you familiar with that one? I highly recommend looking it up and reading it. It's extraordinary. And it also talks, I think, about the other bodily fluids as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
yeah, Steiner was just an amazing seer. He knew this stuff. So, and he's like, what would you say, Nitu, about like 300 years before his time?
Seriously, yes.
And his talks are still relevant, at whatever time you read it. I mean, I started reading him 10 years back. It was relevant even then. And surprisingly, even through the pandemic and even now, this new age that we call, the new order.
Yeah.
And somehow, I mean, when you were speaking, this thing came to me, how during the pandemic, we all had, we were concerned about our immunity levels, and especially, the doctors said that you should take vitamin D supplements. So I always questioned what was it that was missing from the sun spirit in us, which was causing this deficiency of vitamin D, and we had to supplement it, So it was very beautiful, honestly, to go through, these new revelations that happened to you.
Yes, it's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the guy reincarnated from the future. We really do live in dark ages right now. Scientific materialism, it's valuable, it's extraordinary, powerful as a tool, but it's clouded a lot of our thinking. We have to, as spiritually minded people, just realize that you're living in insane times. The mass mind is insane, and to the extent that we participate in the mass mind in these ways, we are insane. And it cuts off our intuition, it cuts off our spiritual sight, it cuts off our connection with our divine self within. So separate yourself from that. Don't just buy into. I mean, look how we all just got in line for the COVID thing, just bought hook, line, and sinker, everything they said about it. I mean, and not everybody, of course, but it's like just bowing down to the authority of scientific materialism. And I'm not saying that there's any, I'm not, I hope you understand that I'm a big fan of science. Science and rationality, the power of the reasoning mind it's powerful. It's one of the most powerful things we've ever come across, but we've had to go all the way over into it in order to get it, right?
Right.
And by doing so, we forgot about a lot of stuff. So now the pendulum has to come back the other way.
Yeah.
We have to be able to, when I was talking earlier about, seeing other people as glowing, their blood glowing like that. When you see that in your mind's eye, you're really seeing it. You're not making it up. The imagination is an organ of perception, but you have to learn how to use it, just like you have to learn how to use your eyes. I went to an art museum one time, and for the first time, I saw a Monet in person, huge, huge canvas. And it was called Lily Pond or something like that. And I looked at it, and the first thoughts to my scientific materialized brain was like, this guy either couldn't paint or he needed glasses. I couldn't make any sense of it. It was just like, if this is impressionism, my impression is that it's not that good, right? It's like what they say about Jackson Pollock. Oh, my 3-year-old could do that. Yeah, right. So, but I couldn't let it go. So I went back to the front desk, and I got one of those headsets that you wear that explains each station as you go by, each painting. And this recording said, it's not the lilies, it's not the water, it's the reflection of the sky in the water. When I heard that, I almost fell over because I saw it for the first time. I looked at that painting and saw the sky reflected in the water, and it just took my breath away. That's training yourself to see how to use your eyes, right? That's the same way you have to use your imagination. You have to train yourself to use your imagination as a sense, an organ of perception. It doesn't just happen. You have to train it. Look.
It kind of sounds like it's an organ of perception if you know what you're looking for. Like in the case of you with the Monet, like, and you're telling us, visualize seeing the blood and seeing it glowing. We could visualize something else, but then it wouldn't be perception, right?
Right.
Yeah.
There are interesting ways to work with it, Tim. Let's see. Suzanne just told me about a friend of hers that pretended she could see through walls. Just pretended. She'd walk by a wall and look and just, imagined what might be on the other side of it. It wasn't very long where she actually could, where her accuracy, started getting really good, where she could tell if there was a person on the other side of the wall, or how many people there were on the other side of the wall. So that's one way you can start into it. It's like right now I'm looking at a forest, and I can imagine seeing the life energy in them, and I can see the kind of the apron of life energy right down by the roots, where the ground and tree come together. I can imagine that. And when I do that, I start to see it. You see, and I can imagine that I can communicate with the tree. You see, and if I do that, if I really do it with equanimity, with mental equanimity, without wanting to, and without, not wanting to, if you know what I mean, because it sounds crazy, right? You don't want to be crazy. So if I can eliminate that from my thinking and just very gracefully entertain that, then things start to show up.
Yeah.
See? That's your imagination working as an organ of perception. But you have to work with it. You have to give you have to give yourself permission to do it, and you have to step forward and do it. You see, but not attack it, and not recoil from it, but just be real easy and real neutral with it. Neutral. After this, this working with the ritual and the sacraments, I'm thinking of doing something else in the book. So you guys who have a copy and are familiar with the book, why don't you look through and see if there's something in it that you'd really like to talk about?
I've got one for you, Michael.
Yeah.
Right now, I think the last thing you led off with is exceedingly important. Maybe you could have some structured exercises for people to work on developing using their imagination faculties and actively developing those.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I love that idea.
I am I am working on a course that I'll have available that goes, it's called Spiritual Exercises That Work. And it's been
Okay.
in development for some time now. But as you guys know, I'm trying to, start a business. I want to develop courses like this and offer them for sale online. And
Mhm.
and that was the first one that I came up with. Oops.
Mhm.
And but now it's been replaced with radical meditation. I'm going to use that as my main launch. And then, but close on the heels of that will be Spiritual Exercises That Work. And it will go through three things. It'll go through, in all three modules are nothing but exercises. And the first one will deal with attention, the second with concentration, and the third one with visualization.
Okay.
It's really complete. So I'll keep you, I'll keep you up to date on it and let you know when that's ready to go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
And in the meantime, hopefully next week we can talk more about Holy Communion.
Absolutely. We'll go one more week on this and we'll finish up the chapter, and you'll be glad we did.
All right.
All right, Nathan.
Okay.
It's nice seeing all of you. Love you all. It's a really a privilege being able to have these kinds of conversations with you. Me too. It's really a am I pronouncing your name right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. It's really a pleasure having you in class. I hope you come back.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
You bet. All right, everyone, this is it. So
All right.
we'll make this available next week, and you get to it the same way. And see you then.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye, Michael. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.